It may sound a little stupid, but I'm convinced that riding a bike really helped me learn to drive. And that got me thinking, what other benefits might cycling be giving us that we may not be aware of? So okay, let me explain a couple of things. Basically, here in the UK, you can't get a driving licence until you're 17. And for me personally, way back then when I was a teenager, my bike was my main and indeed my only form of transport. But riding it around taught me two very valuable things. Firstly, the highway code, basically the rules of the road. And secondly, it gave me the situational awareness I needed to ride my bike on those roads. So when I started to actually learn to drive, it was more about the mechanical aspects of the car. So starting it, stopping it, steering it, and going through the gears and so on. For me, learning to drive was actually pretty easy, and I passed my driving test 6 weeks after my 17th birthday. It would have been sooner, but I couldn't get a test before that. Now I'm sure we're all fully aware of the more established benefits of cycling. Basically, it's fantastic for your physical and mental health. If you combine it with healthy eating, it can help you to lose weight. And if you're riding for transport, not only is it good for the environment, but it can also save you a few quid on fuel. But what are the less well-known benefits associated with cycling? For me, one of the big ones has to be determination. How many times have you been out on a ride and you've come face to face with a really difficult climb that you thought was beyond your abilities, but you took it on anyway? Getting to the top wasn't particularly fast or pretty or elegant, but you still somehow managed to drag you and your sorry arse up there. And similarly, how many times have you been out on a long ride and started to feel tired, but you still managed to get yourself through it? The reason you succeeded wasn't just down to your fitness and your strength, but something equally as important, your determination and your mental toughness. Yes, it might have been easier to have got off the bike, admitted defeat and given up, but you had that primal urge to push on and not let something like the climb or the distance beat you. You just gritted your teeth and got on with it. If you do this often enough, you start to develop an unshakable belief in yourself. Basically, if you can consistently ride up the climbs that you thought were impossible or ride the distances that you thought were beyond you, you start asking yourself, what else can you do both on and off the bike? For many people, cycling is not a solo activity. Riding with others is not only a great way of catching up with old friends, but it's a brilliant way of getting out, meeting new people and making new friends. And that's particularly important the older we get. Meeting up with friends old and new and taking part in some kind of mutual activity is fairly universal. Just think book clubs, gardening groups, or even joining a Zumba class. Very often, one of the major barriers to making new friends is knowing how to break the ice and have some common ground to talk about. But if you're out cycling with people, you automatically have loads to talk about. It's all routes, gear ratios, and how much we hate the headwind. I know that formal cycling clubs aren't going to be for everyone, but all I'll say is that for me personally, I joined my first cycling club over 20 years ago, and the people that I met back then I still consider good friends to this very day. Now there's no doubt that cycling can take you to some pretty amazing places that you may not otherwise have seen. And I know that I've been very fortunate in this over the last couple of weeks, going to places like France and Italy, and no, I probably would never have visited those exact places had it not been for the bike. But that said, I'm also discovering places that I never even knew existed while cycling around my local area. Typically, most people just want to get from A to B in their cars using the most efficient route possible, and this usually means A roads. Now, the problem with A roads is that they're actually routed to bypass towns and villages, so all you'll probably get to see on them is a load of other cars, a few trees, and if you're lucky enough you might get a nice landscape view as you whiz past at 70 miles an hour. By contrast though, a typical cycling route uses much quieter minor roads, and these do go through the small towns and more interesting villages. And if you're not out gunning for some PR or trying to ride round as fast as you possibly can, it's so much easier to stop and have a bit of a look round. And the irony is that these really interesting little places might only be just down the road, but because you've usually been whizzing past in the car, you've never been there in your life. I truly believe that riding a bike has the power to change things for the better, and heaven knows we all need a little bit of that at the moment. Getting out and about on a bike can be incredibly empowering and beneficial, particularly if you do the one thing that I'm going to talk about in the video just here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.